Welcome back. You're watching Traders Corner. This is the penultimate show of the year, so we still have one for next week. But joining me, as always, is Garth McKenzie, founder and editor of Traders Corner. Garth, welcome.
Hi, Julieta.
Garth, so tonight what we're going to do is go through some of the open trades that you had on the portfolio, discuss how they've worked out, and then also detail the charity that we are going to be donating this year's profit to, although we'll only really know next week how much money we have exactly in the pot. But maybe start off with some of those open trades, and I think Kumba and Exxaro being the two.
Yeah, well, that's right. So Kumba we did about two or 3 weeks ago, and if you have a look, the chart of that stock is up on the screen at the moment. And what I'd identified that it has been trending upwards throughout this year, actually. Since January, it's been trending higher. It's one of those stocks that is up several 100% for the year. The break above 140 Rand there, you can see the lateral resistance. That's a bullish break. And then what happened more recently was it consolidated into this triangle structure. And typically your triangles have 5 waves, and they break out on the 5th wave. So this one was pretty textbook. It had 1, 2, 3, 4. It broke out on the 5th wave. Now, we were looking for it to move higher. It still looks okay to me. It's just taking its time. We went long of 400 CFDs at a price of 162.50, and the stop loss there 155 Rand, and we're looking for it to move to 180. Now, it hasn't quite got to the 180 Rand target. If you have a look, there's that dotted line that I've just put onto the chart there. That comes in at 175 Rand, and that is now an overhead resistance level that the stock keeps on bumping up against. My sense is that it is probably going to break out through that resistance at some point. It just got that look about it. It looks like it's forming an ascending triangle with the resistance at 175. But the thing is, because we are at the end of the year and we've got to donate our profits to a good cause, it's time for me to now start locking in the profits or to actually exit some of these trades. So I've decided this morning to exit. I've sold it out at 168 Rand 50, and that locks us in 2,120 Rand in profits. So, you know, not shooting the lights out, but at least it's a little addition to our portfolio. And as I say, if I wasn't forced to close because of the end of the year, I think that share still looks quite bullish to me.
I mean, obviously, with the benefit of hindsight, we could have said, well, what we could have done for the portfolio is go long of Kumba at the start of the year and maybe then spend the rest of the year on holiday or, you know, looking at the modifications for the yacht for 2017. I mean, do you feel in any way kind of, damn it, I didn't actually buy, you know, shares like Kumba and Exxaro, which we're going to discuss next, right at their lowest point?
Look, it's never my style to try and pick bottoms in the market. So we always try and sort of make the moves or make our trades along the lines of the momentum in the market. At the beginning of this year, a lot of these companies just looked so desperate. Kumba, there was concern that they were going to have to, you know, do a rights issue to just stay alive, and a lot of the mining companies looked like that. So it didn't really cross my mind at the beginning of the year to buy them. But I guess also the saying that it's always darkest before the dawn is very much echoed in the way that these shares have behaved this year. Because all the shares that were the absolute dogs of last year have been the best performers this year. And the shares that were the best performers last year have been the dogs of this year. So it's been a tricky year from that point of view. Yeah,
maybe a trading strategy to adopt. We could thrash that out at some point over a couple of drinks. Yeah. What about Exxaro? That was the more recent trade for the portfolio, and you had the 3-day rule that you applied to this one. And how's that worked out?
Yes, that's right. So it is working out for us. What I'd identified here was that big gap down that you can see over there from about 2 weeks ago, or not even a week and a half back, was when Anglo American announced that it was going to sell its stake in Exxaro. It was a 9.7% stake, and they do this via an accelerated book build. And like I explained on the show last week, an accelerated book build is where you've got a large block of stock that needs to be sold into various new shareholders' hands. It's too big to send that through the market. It's just too cumbersome. So what typically happens is the company involved here will take the block of shares to a big investment bank and get them to then distribute the stock amongst various different buyers. Because it's a big overhang of stock, typically they have to drop the price in order to entice buyers in. And that's what you saw there. So the shares in this case were placed at 87 Rand each. And prior to that, you can see that they had been trading at about 100 Rand each. So a 13% discount to the trading price before that. And remember that nothing fundamentally has changed in the business at this point. All that has happened is you've got this excess supply of shares in the market in the short term because of the overhang from this book build. And typically what happens is you'll find that the share price does rebound quite quickly thereafter. Now, the 3-day rule was very much applicable here. You had selling on the first day, selling on the second day. The third day, then you got some nice stability which came in. And that's typically how a 3-day rule trade works. You look for the market to digest this news, and it does typically take about 3 days for that to happen before the price stabilizes, and then you get a snapback rally. So we went long on the third day. We went long of 700 CFDs at 85 Rand 50 with a stop loss at 81, and we're looking for a move to basically close that gap up at 94 Rand. Now again, I'm still relatively confident that that gap will be filled. I just don't have the time on my side to let it play out. Again, because we are ending the year's show, we've got to lock in profits and wrap it up for the year, as it were. I've decided this morning to sell out at 88 Rand 90, so that again locks us in just over 2,000 Rand profit on that trade. Yeah. So again, small profits, but at least it's a profit and it's a move in the right direction. Yeah. And as I say, if I wasn't forced to close out because of the fact that we are coming to the end of the year now, I think I'd be happy to carry on holding this one.
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, now, I know it's not exposed to the copper market, but Goldman Sachs starting to upgrade their copper predictions, although maybe they're a little bit late. Yeah. And certainly the movement seems to be in the direction of the upside for a lot of the resources shares.
Yeah, very much so. They've got momentum on their side. The commodity prices do seem to be moving higher, and it seems like that disaster type scenario that we were looking at a year ago is very much a long-distant memory now.
Yeah. Now, Garth, the big event this week, for traders at least, is futures closeout. And it's a big event for the portfolio because a lot actually hinges on what happens in the next couple of days.
That's right. So if we have a look here, this is the top 40 graph, and it just looks back over the last 4 or 5 months, really. And what's very clear here is this pattern of lower highs and lower lows. So it's very underperforming market at the moment, very weak. And you can see quite clearly that it reversed down off the underside of that channel yesterday, and that also coincides with the underside of the 50-day moving average, which is that red line on the chart over there. Now, you mentioned the futures closeout. What's very important to note here is the very, very heavy concentration of put options that we have at the lower levels. Now, you can see below 43,500, at every 500-point interval below that, there are huge put option interest. And the concern here is that if the market is weak into the futures closeout, then you might find that writers of these put options become forced sellers into the weakness, which could then exacerbate any move to the downside. So I think that's something to be very, very careful of as we approach the futures closeout. I've never seen it as one-sided as this in my career, where you've got so many puts and basically no calls, really. It's all stacked in favor of the put option. So if we do see any weakness going into this closeout, I think just be very, very careful. Also note that we've got the FOMC meeting, the Federal Reserve, the night before. So that's Wednesday night. We're going to have an interest rate decision. Janet Yellen is most likely going to announce a 25 basis point hike in the US interest rates. That's expected, but I think what the markets are going to focus on is what the trajectory for future rate hikes looks like. And there's potential for a little bit of surprise there come Thursday morning.
I mean, just maybe a comment there. If they don't hike interest rates, do you think the market's going to go bonkers?
It would go bonkers. Yeah, it would go bonkers. But I think that is just such an unlikely scenario. They've been waiting for the opportunity to hike rates. The Fed fund futures is pricing in 100% chance of a rate hike now. I mean, if Janet Yellen doesn't take that opportunity to hike rates, then I don't know. I think it's a given. The rates are going to be hiked on Wednesday night in the US.
So that's sketching out the top 40, and of course you've got this put option structure, which you entered into, months ago now?
Yes.
For this December futures closeout.
That's right. We put it on in, I think, about September or thereabouts, and this very crude sort of diagram on the right-hand side here basically illustrates the type of payoff profile that we've got for our option structure. And what it really means is that we make our peak profit at 43,000. For me, the best case scenario would be if we expired at 43,000. At the current level of about 43,900, you can see we're making a mark-to-market profit of 13,807 Rand. A little bit more weakness would be ideal. Too much more weakness wouldn't be ideal. And if we see strength from here, that wouldn't be ideal. So in my perfect world, we go 1,000 points lower into the closeout. Let's see. We'll only know, and we'll report back next week with the final figures for the show to then illustrate how much money we actually have ended the year with.
Yeah, and of course that sort of leads up to our charity donation. We'll get to that in a minute. But Garth, I suppose maybe for those who don't know how the action will actually proceed for the portfolio, wherever the market closes on Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, how does it actually work that then you get the benefits of the structure that you set against the market?
Yeah, the futures closeout happens on Thursday between 12 p.m. and 12:15 p.m. and it's an intraday auction period.
Okay.
So at 12:15 p.m. we'll know what the expiry price was for the top 40 futures. I've been marking this thing to market all along, but basically come that end of Thursday, we then unravel this whole thing. Whatever options were worthless will be worthless. The ones that are in the money will be in the money. We've got some all-me futures that are long against the structure. I mean, I know it is rather complicated, but in simple terms, that's kind of how the payoff would look. Best case scenario is at 43,000 on the top 40. I think we'll come out making about 15 or 16,000 Rand profit at that point. I suppose a worst case scenario was if we were to go up here to about 45,500 on the top 40, then that would mean that we'd walk away with only a profit of about 1,000 Rand. So for me, best case scenario is if we hang around these levels, maybe a little bit lower.
Okay, well that is germane to our charity, and we're going to have a look now at what we chose to donate the money to this year.
Traders Corner's challenge since we started the show is always the same. Begin the year with 250,000 Rand in cash and then look to beat the market using proper trading principles. All proceeds go to charities, and in the past we've supported the Gerald Fitzpatrick Home for the Elderly, the Princess Alice Adoption Home, and recently an education initiative called Ripple Reading. Given the crisis in education that South Africa is working through, Traders Corner would like to do its bit to support valuable learning initiatives. And so this year we decided to fund a bursary scheme started by the Monaghan Montessori School.
We see it as being a really worthy cause, and hence that's why we've chosen to donate the money to Monaghan Montessori School this year. And congratulations.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it, because what we try to do here is we really try to create a small environment that's about community.
The school was established in 2006 by one of the founders of the pastoral idyll that is the Monaghan Farm Development near Lanzeria, just outside Johannesburg. At the moment it has 34 students, most of whom come from the typically privileged background you might expect, and maintains a staff-pupil ratio of just 1 to 6. But the school has begun a bursary system to bring in underprivileged children from surrounding informal settlements, and is hoping to attract more funds to give deserving kids a desperately needed leg up in life.
What children that are outside of this framework, or even the strata or income bracket bring, which is actually for me very humbling, is that they tend to be very hands-on already. They're children that bring with them an immense amount of independence. So we want to afford them an opportunity to not feel like second-rate citizens in an environment. We want them to come in here and go, we actually have value, and there's aspirational qualities that children that come from suburbs or affluent environments where they can learn and coexist. And for us, that's something which is very important.
Monaghan Montessori has set out to nurture independence, learning, play, and a sense of community. And we wish them well in 2017.
Oh, that is the charity of the year. Garth, congrats, and it's always nice to be able to pick a charity and also to be able to donate money to them.
Absolutely, it's wonderful. You know, when I set out with this Traders Corner show 7 years ago, that was always the idea, to give back and to take what knowledge I have to apply it to the market, make profits out of that, and then hand it over to a good cause.
Yeah. And it's looking good, so let's see what happens when futures close out. We're up 25% for the year to date.
Yeah, that's it. We've got nearly 62,500 Rands worth of profit sitting in the portfolio this year, up 25%, so it is looking very, very good. I'll give you the exact figure after futures close out when we report back next week.
And just a reminder that we've got a week or two left for the year. People can still subscribe for a free weekly email.
That's right. Every Tuesday we send out an email describing what will be on the show each week. It's for free. If anyone would like to subscribe to that email service, go to traderscorner.co.za and you'll see there's a free email link in the middle of the page. Register up and we'll send you a free email every Tuesday.
Right, we'll leave it there. Do join us next week for the full breakdown on what we were able to donate to this year's charity. And that was Traders Corner with founder and editor Garth McKenzie.